reminds me, you need a name plate.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll do
You
it.
can do a tag or a tent, whatever you want.
Walk in.
Welcome to the Active Teaching Lab. Today's topic is teaching the Google generation. And I was just saying that we've used this sort of Google generation in Active Teaching Labs on Google before. And those have generally focused on using the Google tool, using Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Spreadsheets, Google this, that, the other thing. And I took almost all of that off the activity sheet today. There are links to past, I can stop this. There are links to past activity sheets on the activity sheet. So if you want all of those things, you can get to them down at the very bottom here. All sorts of past active teaching labs that have all kinds of stuff on how to use Google for that. But I thought it's sort of an interesting thing to, as I was researching this, teaching the Google generation, I started thinking about the mindset list. Are all of you familiar with the mindset list from the Beloit College?
Mm-hmm.
There's a link to it in the activity sheet.
Awesome.
This is fantastic because it says, and they've been doing this for years and years and years and years. Students heading into their first year of college this year, born in 1997, and since they've been on the planet, hybrid autos have always been mass-produced. Google's always been there to organize. They've never licked a postage stamp. Email is their new formal communication. Like if you want to really do things right, you do it via email. And so on, and it goes on. There's like hundreds of things. And every year, it's, I think, a good practice to go in and remind yourself in fall, a lot of the students that I'm going to be seeing this year, not all of them because we have returning students and transfer students and such, but a lot of them are, they're being raised in much different contexts than we were, regardless of whether we were born, 2 years before them even, or 4 years, or 10 years, or 40 years. It's a different life out there. And yet, universities are sort of famously stable as far as the way that we teach at them. So, what can we do and how can we teach a generation where they're focused on different things? Today is happening during the diversity forum when I was over there this morning. And so this paragraph really stuck out with me. They'll encounter difficult decisions about privilege, race, and sexual assault on campus. They need to decipher what's the same and what's changed with issues. So that really jumped out at me as well. To what extent has college changed from discipline-specific content only to sort of the larger issues of life? And what extent should it? What extent can it? What extent should it not? And I think that these are all sort of questions that kind of come up when we talk about teaching different generations. So that's kind of how I was thinking with the looking at different generations and how do we teach them. Technology, of course, plays a huge role because these things facilitate a lot of the way that they communicate, a lot of the way that they look up information in school, a lot of the way that they hand in assignments. So it's technology and culture and all thrown together. That's my little intro spiel. What would you guys like to learn? Let's talk about that. I'll put it up on the board, and we'll make sure that we at least try to address everything. Anybody like to start? Yes.
It's potentially a rabbit hole, but how do you address equity in this situation amongst students or between students? And then the other aspect of equity that I was thinking of is with assessments. If you have students who want to do sort of the traditional term paper versus video project or graphic design, like you talked about earlier, how do you manage that without getting overwhelmed as an instructor or completely abandoning course design in the process?
All right. I put equity versus, well, one size fits all there. And I also put scaling down. Can you change that so that I don't keep looking at my face over there, please? Thank you. Good. Who'd like to go next? Still me.
I guess part of me is skeptical of how much do we really need to change to fit
Yeah.
proclivities. And I guess my reason for thinking that is like, you think back to after World War II and the GI Bill, all of a sudden you have all these people who were coming from like farms and stuff, right? And they were molded in higher education. So is that necessarily a bad thing that there's a certain amount of molding that occurs within higher ed?
Absolutely. Yeah. Good. Definitely want to talk about that. And we can look at the history of education even before that, too, to see what's happening. Tara?
The concept of privacy as related to views. I don't know, there's something about, and I haven't articulated this, it's just moments hit me with current generation undergrads or graduate students who literally I have zero patience for this. You are 20 years behind the times. I'm not engaging. and I don't know, so it's more of it's interesting. So it's the tolerance and the patience or the impatience. I don't.
We'll dig into it.
I don't know what more to say about that.
Which I think is, to me, is a connection to the how much
do we cater to?
How much do we? Yeah, because it's a real generational divide or a potential generational conflict of. I know that you like dancing bears now, but I ain't gonna dance. I've got information, and you're gonna take my class. And you want to grade? You gotta adjust to me.
Right.
The world isn't gonna dance for you.
And sort of that was the piece about the patience and the privacy piece about some of the assumptions in current what I perceive as the undergraduate and graduate population now that. Well, of course, why expect any level of privacy?
Mm-hmm.
We have none, and that's an okay thing. And I think I would view privacy and ownership as a dual, it's both to me. And this is also cultural in the U.S., not just generational.
I'm glad that you added ownership there.
Yeah.
Good. All right, Cliff.
I really bring nothing other than just the general conversation. So.
Yeah.
All right. Lauren.
So I'm battling with a bunch of things in my head. There was an Edutopia article that just came out titled "Students Think Lecturers Are Best, but Research Suggests They're Wrong."
Right.
So do we really know where the heads are of our students and why would they think that a lecturer is best?
Right.
And the other part of me is the people who aren't in this room that are still lecturing in a very traditional way, like the way I had it when I was in college. How do we get them to the table to recognize that there's some change that's happened and that the way that they do, so the research says it, but how do you get the players that aren't here to engage in change? Because it's kind of easy to just keep doing what you've always done.
Yeah.
And then the other piece that this doesn't bring up is the general lackadaisical sense, I think, of students today. It's like, I don't want to have to do the work. I want it to just be given to me. And if that's the case,
But that's why the lecture is preferred.
right.
Give it to me, I'll consume
Right.
it and spit out whatever I need to, like input output. Or that's my
so
impression.
there's the education on education
Yeah.
that still needs to happen on both sides, kind of.
Well, and I mean, I all inside UW this morning had an article like, we beat a record. We're time to the time to degree earning is less than 4 years.
Right.
Like, I'm
Why
old
should we be
school,
proud of
integrated
that?
liberal studies, like we're here to higher ed purpose is not time to degree.
Right. And it's not butts in seats.
Now's a good time to say, oh, if there are, you've already added the article. Very good.
Oh.
You can add it to the very bottom, or somebody added it.
I did.
Thank you, whoever did. Good, yes, expectations. And is there an element of laziness? And that sort of builds up on who changes and why. Heidi, thoughts?
I'm Heidi with the program in ESL. I don't think I have anything really original, but how do we maintain authentic face-to-face learning and communication with students when they have their heads in their devices, and when the activities and the things that we set up in class are so designed and rooted in a press book, a canvas, an activity? Like, how do we ensure that they're making eye contact with each other and they know the names of the people next to them and
Why?
are able to greet someone and say, where are you from and what's your major?
Why would they do that?
And just have authentic interactions.
Yeah.
So that comes to what's authentic to you might not be authentic to them then.
I'm going to throw that word down, authenticity.
Why do I need to know your name? I can just ask it, why do I need to remember your name?
Why do I need to know your phone number when it's just programmed into my phone? Right? I don't know. I think
Wow, this is suddenly ballooned.
Yeah.
We're now talking.
Generation,
We're now talking.
like in this room, right?
Here we are.
Yeah, we should have had our one token young person
Yeah.
here and just
I like
pepper
it.
him with questions.
Tokenism is another thing.
Speak for your entire generation.
I can only video conference in my daughter right now.
Yeah.
Right.
She's a freshman in college.
You make her take your Canvas tests.
Yeah.
Or no, you do. Test out Canvas. You might as well speak for your generation.
I can offer my personal anecdote. Just last night, I had an exchange with a daughter through FaceTime, which is so freaking cool. She's in college too. And this does not reflect well upon me and my wife. But she does not know how to balance her checkbook. We were at 11 o'clock last night trying to explain, because now suddenly this new thing she has that's called a credit card, she hasn't appreciated how it works. She doesn't know. It's like just all these things that she's been able to completely avoid, and it's not as intuitive as she wants it to be, which I'm sure is fed by a lot of the instant gratification technology. So like how much, is that not also leading into a classroom when she has to work and study a little harder and read that boring textbook 3 or 4 times before she can kind of chip away and get at it? And she's going to want a different, give me another document, or give me another person, or my teacher's boring, or whatever. So it's very interesting.
I haven't balanced my
Why do
checkbook.
we still use checkbooks? We're the only country in the world that does that.
And right. Who's got Venmo on their phone?
Well,
Nobody
and
does
good
checkbooks
point, and I
anymore.
guess and maybe beyond, that's curious, I'm wondering about that, but too, now that you mentioned that, but just tracking money.
Tracking money. Tracking money is a
Yeah, regardless
financial
of
literacy
Larger,
skill,
larger
for
issue
sure.
of that, so.
But again, why do I need to track money? It tells me how much I have. There's so I just think
Well,
that expectations change.
Yeah,
Things,
that's true.
I don't
That's
do
right.
long
That's
division
a good
anymore
point.
either.
That's a good point. When I go to buy something, I don't have to first look at my checkbook to see what my balance is. It's either on my phone or I've already known it because I've been in there 17 times, the last couple of days anyway, so I know where I am on my balance.
Right.
That's a good point.
And I've got a
For her, it was the whole balancing.
overdraft thing. So even if I do overdraft, I'm covered.
Yeah.
And then I get an alert and I fix it after the fact.
Mm.
Life is easy. And expectations change because I no longer have to balance my checkbook. So this just talks about millennials and Gen Z, but I don't know how many of you have been in conversations where they talk about, what about Gen X? What about the boomers? What about the great generation? I'm trying to think of all the different ones. What about the next generation? What are their options going to be?
Flying.
So what I thought was interesting was when I first started the idea of teaching the two generation, and I was like, oh yeah, who are kids these days? And I recognized in this that there's actually two generations in there. There's Gen Z and the millennials that are on their way out, and they do have different expectations. The millennials, a lot of them are starting to enter into the instruction now, and they're bringing all of their mindsets, like, oh, mobile pioneers, so yeah, I will be totally good with my mobile phone, using my mobile phone on this, but it's going to be kind of an exciting thing versus a boring thing. Like emails now, I'm starting to think it was first exciting, and now it's kind of boring. I try not to use email that much, but it is a pragmatic, useful way to do formal communication.
Wait, what do you use instead?
Text messages a lot.
Even with students and.
Yeah, or Canvas inbox, which I'm trying to. That's clunkier than I want it to be.
Cannot type on my phone. I can't.
Yeah, neither can I, but that's all right. You don't have to, because the mistakes are part of communication, informal communication. Now, and with students, I do more formal communication. It's only rarely that I'll do informal texting.
I appreciate that they don't ask me for my phone number.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And back to the question of privacy, data, expectation. What are our expectations? Millennials, we're a lot about like expanding the contact lists, and I think that the Gen Z is now focused on, I don't want to be Snapchat buddies with everybody. I just want to have like a smaller circle of friends. I don't want to give out that information. Certainly, I was collecting Facebook friends because it gave me more opportunity to pay more attention to things I didn't know and expand a network. But that's not necessarily the case anymore. So how can we teach people who are so different than us?
It's funny.
And I think that's where my question comes at is, as long as you are setting, you have a coherent approach and you set clear expectations, can't you expect them to be adult enough to adapt? And I'm not saying you should be super rigid, but as long as you're thoughtful about your approach and it makes sense and you explain it, then on one hand, you really need to cater to.
It's funny, this is maybe the third active teaching lab where I have felt like this opportunity would present itself as the instructor to sit down with my students on the first day. Don't even cover the material, just sort of do like a meta discussion about how we operate and how I intend to run my room, but for the very purpose of a variety of reasons, but just let them know, what I expect of you and how we need to do a little more of this and a little bit less of that, and like explain your rationales behind it. It seems like, but of course, I'm not an instructor, so I'm not really an instructor, so I don't know if that's workable, but it would seem like you gotta lay that baseline at the beginning, just.
Well, and that's traditionally how college classes have started, as you go and you walk through the syllabus.
It's a syllabus day. Here's what I expect. Here's what I expected.
And some instructors are better about it than others. Some are just like, this is the content we're covering, turn stuff in, while others will take the time to actually and this is why we're doing it.
This is how I'd like the community to develop over the course of the semester. I think that's an excellent way to do that. If we are clear, adaptability is a life skill, and part of what we want to teach them is how to, they're going to have to, because they're going to get generation Z plus, or whatever the next one is after Z, double set. and they're going to have to adapt to them.
Yeah,
It's-
but at the same time, I mean, it would seem that your expectation of their response and participation is predicated on them having the skills needed to meet those expectations. And frankly, my own instructional experience, I'm not sure if everyone has the same skills.
Yeah.
Right.
For example, critical reading. That's something you expect critical thinking skills, you expect them to be a given in a higher education setting, but on day one, week one of freshman course, is the playing field level? If it's not, then how do you have expectations of someone who has literally no skill in that domain, and you're just telling them this is the standard, but they have no way to meet it? And that sort of goes into my question about equity.
So step one is communicating, here are the expectations, and the follow-up to that is, if you cannot meet them, or if you have trouble meeting them, or if you feel like you don't meet them, let's talk and figure out how and when and if you can.
What resources are available
What
on
resources
campus
are
for
available.
reading or writing labs or something, yeah.
Again, a really good first day of class thing to cover.
'Cause that's, am I correct? Is that's effectively what the ESL program is about, right? It's like leveling playing fields is for foreign students coming in who, before they can really be released onto campus, they need to level up, as it were.
They need to develop their writing skills. They need to also understand the expectations for participation in
Yeah.
Discussion sections and
Yeah.
classrooms.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
And the Wisconsin Experience Seminar is in some ways the same thing. It's how do I survive in this atmosphere versus the one that I was top of my class of in Cadet or whatever. It's different.
Yeah.
So how do I get up to speed? So it is them changing, but it's not only them changing, right? When child labor laws came into effect, and all of these rough kids who were very good at factory work because they'd been metaphorically whipped into shape by their bosses into these, following directions very carefully. Now all of a sudden they're in these classrooms. The teachers are overwhelmed because last year they had 15 elite students who didn't have to work in the factories, and this year they have all these ruffians. Well, at least they're good at following directions. Let's make directions, a big part of, and structure, a big part of how I teach. As a survival skill, there's no other way I can do this other than say, you're all sitting in rows, there will be order, there will be silence, there will be, you only speak when I call on you, and you follow these expectations. Technology lets us move away from that a little bit and personalize because we can.
I mean, so that's kind of, I think, my point, and then you can talk about it, I think, as an equity issue, but the thing is that you're going to have the opportunity for a diverse, where they came from, basically, and how they're used to dealing with things, I think is, in some senses, much greater today than used to be. Even shared cultural phenomena are not as shared as they used to be.
Yeah.
So that's why, for me, it's kind of like, not that it's a pointless exercise, but like, so how much should I really be paying attention to the mindset list? Like it lists things like, well, there's always been a war in Afghanistan. It's like, yeah, but how many of them actually?
No.
Yeah. They've seen Afghanistan in the newspaper, but they've also seen Germany in the newspaper. Like, how has that impacted their?
It becomes invisible, right? If it's part of our life the entire time, then it's sort of, oh yeah, it's the background. The sky is always blue.
And like, for instance, I know instructors who are like, oh yeah, my students are digital natives, so we're going to do this technology heavy stuff. But it turns out that, well, they're digital natives in the sense that they've always used iPhones. They've used iPhones for social stuff, for learning. And so now they're feeling completely like fish out of water. So you can almost, by trying to cater too much, you almost can make it worse.
Whereas the digital immigrants, this metaphor was, I had a mentor back at UW-Eau Claire, he's like, computers are like cars. When they first came out, if you had a car, you had to know how to fix it. You had to know how to change the tire. You had to know how to do the oil. You had to know how to do all of these things. And only if you couldn't fix it after you've beaten out your amount of skill level, then you bring it to a specialist. I don't even change my oil anymore. Like, I've gotten very comfortable with that. Now with technology, I don't expect to have to know how to program in order to use the technology, whereas the initial folks who ushered in the computers are like, oh, I need to know how to do these things. I need to know how to fix after a crash or delete a virus or whatever. So if I don't need to know it, but if I've learned it, I would be like, oh, great, now these kids all know, they know all the things that I had to learn, but they haven't because they didn't need to. Heidi, you were going to say something.
There are some skills that we assume our students have when they're entering that they don't. So
Yep.
for example, some of my international students did not know how to double space a document in Microsoft Word. I don't know if that's also the case for some domestic students as well, but they may have been using like Pages or a different kind of software in their home countries. So even communicating expectations for
Yeah.
assignment, maybe we try to solve that through short videos that students watch on how to format a paper. So it's a longer video that's broken up into segments from how to center your title, how to single space the personal information on the top, right or left hand side of the page, how to double space, how to enter page numbers, insert page numbers.
And it's not sufficient to just say, we want you to do it this way. You need to actually provide them with the instruction on how to do it.
Yeah, and the video instruction that they can watch seems to help, but some of them still just want you to hold their hand and show them on their computers.
Do you remember do you all remember penmanship when you were first grade and we had the thick lines and the thin lines, or sometimes the lines in the middle were dashed lines? I went to a school that didn't do this, and then I transferred in December to a school that did do this. And so when I transferred, I was like, John, like that. And my teacher got so mad at me. This is the one that slapped me in front of class. But that was it was horrifying because my expectations were different. I didn't know that you needed to do that, and it was never explained. The assumption was that I would follow directions, but I didn't even know what directions.
And everybody would know.
And everybody would know, yeah.
And seeing some of and to me, the cultural assumptions around use of Microsoft products or other what I consider monopoly, like we're fourth
Yep.
generation that our monopolies are now in the digital world, not in utilities or public utilities of the early 20th century. That what tools are being used at what level or at what institutions is shaping more of a generation, purposely or not purposely. And I would actually argue, you use the term Google generation.
Yeah.
So it's like I see, I've never gotten an answer from Madison School District, and actually the lawyer came to meet me when I asked the simple question about licensing and who owns the content. Like, will my daughter own her content in her portfolio from her classes when she graduates? Still haven't gotten an answer. She's in 7th grade, and I've been asking that since 3rd grade.
And you can ask that here, and
And
the lawyers may say something about it.
But I can get at the contract too, here, or or the licensing agreement. And so it's this piece about, of course, like in other countries, no, they're not using Microsoft or on other platforms. Here, we make an assumption that in administrative land, we're using Microsoft possibly, or we're using Dell product, whatever the case is. But the piece about shaping what learning is, or what content is, or what a classroom is, I'm just trying to bring to attention that we're not questioning that. Like, we're not actively talking about it.
The Google generation is specifically, they start school, the first computer that they have is a Chromebook, and it's like the sky is blue. It's always been blue.
Yeah.
This is what was given to me in 1st grade, and continues to be what I use.
and I don't have to look at settings, even when they change and
Right.
updates or anything else. And so
I don't have to dig under the hood at all.
Right? Why would I do that? Well, and maybe maybe a more extreme case in that and I'm just like speaking off, but like I view it. I have a 25-year-old nephew, and then my daughter's 12, and so it's this interesting, these snapshots of, and he was at Michigan State with Desire to Learn, which he hated, of course, like, because here's this school thing, but then everything else in life is something else, and it's so rigid, and it's so boring, and I can't do anything with it, you know? And then my daughter, who we, like, got a free tab A, so we set up her school Chromebook, or her, like, the mapping of her Chromebook at school that she does, so she doesn't have to carry the extra 7 pounds every single day, and map that at home, and that's only her school device, period. And then, like, and then we use other devices for life, or social, or fun, or art that is separate from school. And some of it started because we happened to be in Germany when Angela Merkel's phone was hacked. And I've maybe told this story here before. I got back, I couldn't get into my Google Drive campus, like the institutional one, asking me for all kinds of content, took it to security, they're like, we don't know. So I'm like, who's viewing, what access is Google giving to my institutional Google Drive because I was on network there? And it was like a very clear, distinct, like I couldn't get on when we got back.
So German intelligence thinks that maybe you did.
Or the US does, or somebody does, don't know who. And so, and my daughter was maybe like 5 or 6 at the time. And I was like, we're not using Google. And then like a couple of years later, it's like, oh crap, you're in Google Classroom. Are you freaking kidding me? Can we go under an alias? Because we actually use, I should have said, like, I don't exist as a person with an account among major monopolistic service providers.
Interesting.
There's probably some legal like ramifications of that, but I don't trust this current environment in terms of access to information.
It probably makes you stick out like a sore thumb on the
Oh
lists
yeah,
that
please,
you are on.
like absolutely.
What you get for traveling.
Yeah, right.
Taking in other
So I don't know.
cultures.
So I don't know where that comes in, but it's like, and I know my daughter's not reflective of her peers, right? So, like, there's like, I don't know. Yeah, like we know we're being watched all the time. Like she'll wave at cameras, she'll like, that's what life is. And I'm like, ah! And I view the academic side, learning, the same thing. Like who, an instructional tech might have access to a TA, a prof.
Yep.
There might be other folks in there. How often is that cleaned up? What access does Google have, or instructor? I don't know.
And the flip side of, too many people access this is that now instructors can't add new people to the course to test it out.
Right.
So they're, by closing it down, we now can't see what other people can see, and so we don't know.
That's true.
Or now there's two. It used to be that as an instructor, I was, the royalty of the classroom. I could do what I wanted to. The doors closed. I didn't have the oversight. That's no longer the case. We don't have the privacy. We have to document. We have to report. Reports are gathered whether we want to, whether we report or not. Data is collected and analyzed by the learning analytics folks, perhaps, not necessarily, but potentially, by programs, by the administration, etc. Who owns that? Who can do that? What are the policies about clarity and transparency for that? Mm-hmm. Are there any? A lot of them, they have a policy and they're like, we need to include this other area too. Okay, let's add this other area. And so they keep on evolving as new areas like, we didn't address that. Let's add that too. Yeah. And students, they kind of get swept along with these questions and these policies as they change. And generally they are powerless or they feel powerless to take a stand and to say, no, I don't want to do your Canvas discussion. And to what extent is that a choice that they make that we respect? And to what extent is that a expectation that, I'm sorry, in my class, I'm not having you buy a textbook, but I am having you join this data digital experience and do these things.
The comments that you were just making, Tara, I think, unfortunately, it was a sort of more fundamental question. Do you need tech to teach?
Do you need tech to teach?
Yeah. I mean, could you teach the Google generation without just a chalkboard as effectively as you could?
Sure. I mean, well, there's
If
as effectively as you could. That's where the answer is no. Can you teach? Sure. Cliff and I can go have a really good class, and we'll both learn all kinds of stuff, just the two of us talking back and forth face to face. There's a lot we won't learn because we won't have access to actual knowledge outside of what exists in his head and in my head. So it'll be kind of limited, but we'll have a good time. And
yeah, but I'm saying just to play the devil's advocate, being in the classroom is already a curated learning experience to begin with. So if you set your learning goals and objectives just sort of skills development, then what is outside the classroom is somewhat irrelevant and material.
Is a classroom a curated environment? My classroom is not.
Well, sure it is. You design a syllabus.
I design a syllabus, but the content that's in the syllabus, I have students go out and find for themselves and create for themselves and make for themselves and share with the others. I'm not doing that ahead of time. It's not a closed box. It's an open thing.
I guess, again, devil's advocate, it's not a free-for-all either.
Yeah. Okay. Some would argue.
Have you been in this class?
Lauren's taking my class.
I mean, just to hear you, and this is also happens in these debates where there's a lot of vaguenesses and
Yeah.
devil's in the details. I'm not sure totally where you guys are coming down on, but I'd also say that a freshman algebra class is going to be substantially different than a graduate level ethics,
Right.
Bioethics and the modern hospital or something like that.
Yeah.
So one of them might lend itself to more. Are you laughing at my course title?
No,
That was a
I added
spontaneous
something to the
course.
bottom
Oh,
of
okay.
your sheet.
Okay. I'd say that was a
I'm gonna wait.
spontaneous thought. So, but yeah, but I still kind of sympathize. Like, is there not a point at which, at least maybe just a classroom experience, the 3 times a week that I have my students for that 1 hour, can I not? Let's just sort of chill out on the technology and let's just talk.
Yeah.
And you're gonna leave here with information and ideas and prompts and resources so that, yes, when you leave, of course, I expect you to totally explode on your phone and you're just gonna be all over the phone and the technology.
On your terms,
On your
rather
terms.
than on my terms.
That's right.
Which I think
But
is your
for
point.
this moment, for right here, I'm phones away. Let's just talk, and we're gonna kind of. I'm thinking you set up your syllabus right, you should be able to do that. But it's not exactly a completely technology-free
But I
course
think,
either.
sort of what I think you were saying earlier, I don't think, in my own experience as a French instructor on this campus, I don't think people, at least students, have the ability to have social conversations with someone that they do not know.
All the more.
The immediate tendency in the 15 minutes per class is what's on Snapchat, who's on Instagram, fall asleep on the desk on some occasions, but
Well, this is
that tech serves as an avoidance to face-to-face communication.
to which I,
Yes.
again, coming from a non-professional instructor, I mean, like non-professional, that's not my job, but all the more reason. My gosh, it breaks my heart to think about generations of humans growing up who are incapable of conversing and making eye contact and having mature conversation.
The flip side of that is they are saying, wow, it breaks my heart that all these old geezers can't even they can't even type on their phone.
24
right?
hours a day.
It's perspective.
I'm asking for this much time. to
And
have
look
a
at that,
good
you're using an
conversation with
analog
me.
clock.
That's a pie chart. An analog pie chart. But yeah, it's like, I'm not asking for your kidney. I'm asking for 1 hour out of every 2 days to come in here and talk like a human being. I don't know. So, but of course.
I think that
And I could have a Canvas course that is fully, embracing of all the new technologies that would satisfy that itch, but just say for this social moment that we're in here, sorry, if you're a hyper introvert, you're gonna get a rash by the time you leave this class because I'm gonna drive you nuts because I'm gonna make you talk.
And the piece about that, like
Ah.
how far does it go? And I'm reflecting
As
on
far as I
the
want
like
to.
the outside of the classroom stuff that I'm like, what does it, and I think it might look like different things in different types of classes, like an intro freshman class, large lecture versus, or just what I've witnessed, middle schoolers, no phones, right? Taken away, you're sent to the principal's office. Most of the kids are smaller than the instructors or the administration. By high school, no enforcement whatsoever. The rule is there, but no enforcement. So the kids are, so the high school kids, like the college kids, are sitting there with their devices going at it. And so this piece about authority and respect, like something, like post-World War II, GI Bill, there was this still maybe some value around respect for authority, where that's like totally out the window. It would strike me in most settings here. But like, how is there then intrinsic motivation for the to me it's like what would motivate the students to put the devices down? Not like, here are the rules, or where you're putting personal devices and or, what engages the group enough to want to participate genuinely. I mean, I'm just asking the question, right? And I live in this land of like, here's boomers, right, who lay out beautiful instruction that the millennials like eat up, right? Oh, you're laying out what I should do, and I can achieve that.
Checkbox.
But at the same time, they'll turn to a Gen X and be like, no, that's old school technology. Like the boomer can't even like touch that. Like has no idea. But like, no, I have no patience for this. Like, here's what I'm gonna do. And so I feel in the middle of, at least in the land where I live, that like sometimes there's some respect for authority, or just the need to please, or the desire to, let me check off all those boxes or do all these things that you've outlined for me. It's just like what my mom did for me too. It's just funny, I don't know, like I feel like I live in a totally surreal land between them.
Yeah, and what I was hearing you say that sort of made me think when I'm teaching, I sort of realized, I guess, over the past few years, the importance for me in my classroom of saying the reason why you're doing this is X, Y, Z reason. And I didn't grow up, and I guess I still don't. I don't really think anyone ever told me why the value or benefit of doing what I was doing while I was doing it and for what purpose. But I don't know if that's helpful, but I think that's sort of the hook for participations. The reason why I'm asking you to learn that, do whatever thing is because when you're in this situation, generally, artificially or naturally, it contributes to your social interaction, hopefully in some way.
So this is why grandparents are learning FaceTime, and so Gen 1 and Gen 2, they're right next to each other. They navigate this sort of compromise, like you can have your computer during these times, but during these other times we can't, right? You negotiate these sort of rules and expectations. We at Generation 3, we've already had this negotiation as Gen 2 with Gen 3. We've made that together. Now we've got to try to figure out, how do we get Gen 3? Many of our instructors are Gen 3 or Gen 4, right? Gen X, Millennial, boom. How do we navigate that? Where do we say, hey, come over to me, to my side? Or do we go all out and say, I'm going to join Snapchat and we'll have all of our class discussions there? It seems like we need to compromise, right? We need to negotiate, where do we meet? And the institution is all about, to James' point, this is how we do it at the institution. These are the practices, the expectations that we have. Let's talk about them the first day, and you come and you change, you adapt to the institutional things. How much do we say, all right, introvert, I understand that it's harder for you to speak up in class, so I'm going to give you a space in a digital forum where you can think more carefully about things before you hit submit. And to what extent do we go whole hog and say, all right, one particular crazy person, we'll do all the digital stuff. You can go ahead and do all the digital stuff, and we'll try to meet you there, which sounds like a terribly difficult thing to do as an instructor.
Yeah, because your standards are individual.
Yeah.
So maybe the scale question would be for not just 400 students, but maybe for 10 students and manage, to remain somewhat stable and sane.
Yep.
At least and consistent in your instructional practice when you're managing 10 different
Yeah, the class is going to be different if you have 200 18-year-olds versus if you have 35 22-year-old or 28-year-old graduate students, right? Those are going to be two very different classes, both scale but also expectations. And then you get those mixed classes where you've got some returning adults and you've got a bunch of other Gen Z folks. Now, how do you help that returning Gen X student?
That is interesting. I'm now, for the first time ever, kind of connecting the dots. Yeah, what if I were to go back to a classroom? And I would just see myself being so resentful. Like, listen, I'm just here to try to learn Italian,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to pick up 3 more apps for my phone and try to figure out how to submit and play with this software. I just want to learn the language.
But you're in my classroom.
Yeah.
Here's my expectations.
Sure. As long as I can drop your class and take your class, or whatever. As long as I can do that. But if you're all going past me, I'll go to MATC or whatever. If I had that opportunity.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Maybe you offer 2 different courses. The same course, same learning objectives, same credit. This is the new tech generation. This is the low tech. We'll still get you there, but just they're different experiences, different styles. You sign up for what you want.
That jogs something else. Is like I was in an intensive Mandarin here, right?
Mm-hmm.
We learned as if we were kindergartners or little kids in families. No textbooks, no written anything for like the first semester, and we were the premier. And this was proven language acquisition. Like don't learn anything. You just start talking it as if you were a child. And so this piece about what does the research say about effective learning in that subject area, right? And does that hold any authority in terms of how content is delivered or how classrooms are implemented?
How has it changed?
Or how technology has, right? So
Because now,
right, and the means through which the content is distributed, right? Could the same thing be done with FaceTime as we did in classroom dialogically? And that probably wouldn't hold for some physics course or something. It's subject matter specific. It's interesting. But the piece about what research is valid and reliable, and does it inform what we do, regardless of what our quote-unquote customer as a learner might say. Because the idea of a customer as a learner, like, obviously sends me over an edge. Or, like, time to earn a degree as the end point being earn a degree, like, I'm the, yeah.
So this is one of the things, I love the question of what research is accurate. I look at the teaching and learning with technology research, so much of it is based on really terrible, 1991 style tools, where it was a forced all right, we're going to have you learn this new technology, and then we're going to try to use it to have you teach each other or to have you learn stuff. Terrible technology, no longer valid, no longer applicable, not anything comparable to what people have right now, and they're using this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
The research can't keep up. So proven language acquisition, I would bet you anything that a lot of Mandarin learners are not using nothing. A lot of them are sitting in front of watching Bob the Builder or whatever the hot new thing is in Mandarin. Or just like, I sat down in front of Mr. Rogers in Sesame Street and...
Right.
Institutionally, what is the relationship between evaluations and tech adoption? Is it, I guess, what drives that? Are people sort of placating to the evaluation because they want, to make the course better because they think it would please people more? Or is it, this is a very broad question.
So even beyond technology, am I teaching the content the way that I want to teach and they're making them work with my expectations, or am I catering to their laziness and their desires just so that I get the better evaluations? I think it varies from instructor to instructor.
So we do mid-semester surveys that cover all of that, from what the instructor's doing to what the students are doing to the technologies that are being used, and we ask very specific questions on it. And this kind of ties in with, do you pronounce it Tara or Tara?
Tara.
Tara
Yeah.
was
And
saying,
yeah.
So pedagogically,
Yeah.
the way you were learning
Right.
Chinese, that would be an appropriate
Right.
approach. You're going to have a lot of students that are like, because of wherever they came from, whatever their background is, they're going to want the rules, they're going to
Right.
want the grammar structures, and your teacher wants them to just be able to say things, to actually use the language in context. So I think when we even look at our surveys, there's this battle between what we know is a pedagogically sound approach,
Right.
and what the students think
As
we
a
should be doing or shouldn't be doing. So some of their comments we do take into consideration and we change things.
Mhm.
And other comments, you look at them and you're like, well, okay, so this person what that tells me is I need to do a better job of onboarding and explaining why we're learning it this way or why we're using this technology, not just here, use this or do it this way, but actually sort of front loading that so students know why
Yeah.
when it's.
I'm hearing multiple means of representation and engagement, and we can have the face-to-face dialogic, discussion, and we can also say, and you are also going to have to do this online discussion forum, even though it's awkward and terrible. Heidi.
Two of my colleagues and I administered a short pilot survey to a slice of our students this semester, and we asked a few basic questions, one of which was what makes a good teacher and what makes good teaching, and then we had a couple of other questions like what makes a classroom welcoming. We had 76 respondents. We didn't have any kinds of, they were open-ended questions, and guess how many people mentioned technology in what makes good teaching?
I would bet, I was going to say under 10. I was going to go 0, but.
So for them, qualities like patience, approachability, kindness, preparation, organized, clear explanations, these were prioritized. So it's been very interesting for us to wade through the data because it reinforces kind of the humanistic or human side of teaching.
Yeah.
And I guess one of the takeaways is wherever you are in whatever context you're in, pose these two questions to your students just to see what you get back so that then you can kind of reflect on what you do as a teacher. So we're going to be presenting on this at a conference.
Excellent.
Later this month.
In the spring, I want to look at some of the, not just the research that's out there right now, but I'm doing a fellowship on leveraging technology to learn, where I want to talk to students and say, some of the same questions that you did. What are the experiences that you had that are most useful for you? How did your learning change and how is it evolving? What technologies are you using? Because part of it's kindness, it's caring, it's communication and clarity. And my question in doing academic technology is, how can technology help you do those things even better for more people with more equity and more, the ability, how does it let you be more flexible? And in some ways, how does it make you be more rigid because you have to use these other mediums?
I was thinking one way Canvas facilitates kindness and flexibility is I can extend the deadline to accept your homework.
Yeah.
If you ask me, no problem. I'm happy to do that. And they perceive that kind of interaction as being friendly and kind and patient.
Yeah. Very good. In the last 4 minutes here are the things that we have not talked about. A little bit about authenticity and having the students lead the experiences will help them become more authentic. And in some ways it can be use the tools that work for you. And if you choose to not use digital tools, that can be okay as long as it still fits with the rubric and addresses the things that you need to address. We started off a little bit with privacy, data expectations. The question about who knows best, well, the research is, I think, wrong or outdated or doesn't count. So in some ways we look at sort of what are the underlying things. As Heidi said, you know, it's kindness, it's caring. We know that that works. Technology X or technology Z or technology whatever else, those do not necessarily matter as much. So it's how do we translate sort of these more human qualities that we do have lots of good research on into the technologies. Scaling is another part that I think is a big part of technology. We're able to do a lot more, have a lot more flexibility for these authentic learning opportunities because of technology. So how can we do that? How can we scale without causing harm by stealing their data or their intellectual property, by forcing them to download 3 new apps, by, you know, if they're morally opposed to it, etc. Anything else that we've not talked about here that we want to dig into in the next minute? No? Thank you for having a really cool philosophical discussion with us today. We didn't talk about how to embed anything. Good job. If you could, on your way out, hit a few check boxes, write a few reflections, drop them out on the table on the way out, that would be great.
John, have
Yes.
you since become acquainted with Starhop or Starship or
The little food delivery
the other
thing?
little guys?
No, but a friend of mine ordered something from it, and she said it took 20 minutes to deliver, so she had stayed after class and had to talk to students while she waited for her delivery. And I was like, oh, good job. There it is.
She multitasked.
It's helping her be a more approachable instructor, right? Because she had these extra 20 minutes to wait, and she talked to her students during that time. Go technology. Bad technology.
I just think they're so cute. I don't know what it is about them.
The first time I
Around.
saw one, I need to take a nap because I forgot numbers.
Oh, you thought you were maybe.
I didn't know what was going on. And then it started making this very loud siren screaming noise because it ran into the.
Were you taking a nap on it?
No, I was just watching it and they got stuck in the bike racks in front of that house.
Oh.
Yeah.
Did it break itself? Did it?
Wait, are you talking about the food robots?
Yeah, little food robots, Starship.
I hate that. I want them gone.
Do they block the intersections for you?
They
and,
nearly caused an accident.